Hi, it's Rupert here from Action Coach Nick Kinross, and I'm joined today by Mark from Ellisons. So, Mark, welcome.
Thank you.
So, Mark, tell us who and what are Ellisons?
Ellisons are a property consultancy based in Edinburgh. Work throughout central Scotland to provide people with a more bespoke and more targeted service for um, high-end clients or more demanding clients.
And 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 you're recently award winning.
Yeah, we won the UK Property Awards, Scotland and UK award for the best consultancy for the second year and fourth year for Scotland. So yeah, we're serial winners.
Fantastic. So, so how did you come to create Ellisons?
Um, I created a well, I created a business previously and worked up to that by working in private practice. And when I exited that business, I realized that there was a demand in the market for a much more bespoke, high-end service where people were wanting a greater level of engagement and better sort of advice and not being passed around parts and parcel to other people. So that's when Ellison's was born. So the idea is to charge high fees, but to give a very, very high level of engaged service. So it's a very bespoke service. It's not, it's your very high end. It's your Rolex. It's your Louis Vuitton. It's not your middle of the road. That's for sure.
Yeah, and you've been dealing with some of the most valuable properties in Scotland, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. It's difficult to quantify, but we've had two sales this year of 5 and 5.5 million, as well as sales of 3 and 4. So yeah, we're right up there with the very upper end of Scotland's transactions. Definitely, yeah. It's been a real privilege actually.
And yeah, I mean, people talk a lot in business about customer satisfaction, and customer satisfaction's, I guess, in my books, a bit of a misnomer because who wants to be satisfied? People really want to be delighted. They want to be wowed. How do you go about? I mean, dealing with the sorts of people you're dealing with and the properties you're dealing with, and winning awards. You're clearly delivering that sort of exceptional service. How do you go about setting up to do that?
I think, yeah, I think the way to do it is to is to actually get to know your client, build up a relationship. So it's a relationship-driven business rather than a transactional-driven business. And so really getting to understand your clients makes it much easier to deliver for them because you know them. And it sounds like a cliche, but if you, I mean, for instance, I'm selling a £3.5 million property off market for a client in East Lothian, and I've known him, or I met him first of all in July 2021. So I've got to know him pretty well over a number of years. We've had various conversations, and therefore I kind of know the way he ticks broadly, and yeah, it's easier to deliver in that regard because I know what he wants.
So, so when you've been building the current business, what have been the biggest challenges you faced?
Oof, gosh. Just stamina, really. Stamina and keeping it going. Keeping that level of intensity and unrelenting consistency going. It's hard work, isn't it? I was just getting ready for this meeting and I was thinking, God, I'm actually knackered, really tired. Because it just requires a level of engagement which isn't easy. You've got to be there 24/7. And you're paid handsomely for it, but people expect, if they ask you to dance, you dance. And that's hard sometimes because it's all encompassing, and it means that you're not flat out all the time, but you're on call all the time, and you're sort of in a semi state of capture, I suppose, where at any stage you can be asked to jump, and you need to jump.
Yeah.
Some of the best opportunities have arisen when I've dropped everything and really gone for it. I can think of it, a couple of really good examples where if I said, you know what, I'll go tomorrow, probably wouldn't have come off.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've got to be on sort of 15-minute call out. That's
So I
hard.
mean that piece of being present and giving yourself 100% towards success is huge. But you've mentioned that the challenge there in terms of stamina and resilience. What have you found are the strategies that work for you to help maintain that resilience?
Well, I think if you enjoy what you do and really enjoy, you know, you enjoy what you do and you're clear about your goals, then the process is a lot easier, and the element of sort of engagement is a lot easier. I mean, let me give you an example. I was I was talking to somebody yesterday, and I was saying how we pulled off 3 big deals in East Lothian. And I said one of the deals came from a mail drop that I did on the 27th of December last year. I know because I posted on LinkedIn. And I remember it was so cold, I got out of my car because I was doing a leaflet drop in the Archfield estate. And it was so cold, I had to get back into my car because my hands were really hurting. They were just, well, hurting. They were uncomfortable. And I remember thinking, I'm 51 years old. I'm out there mail dropping. It's the middle of winter. It's basically snowing. And why am I doing this? This isn't what I set out to do. It's quite miserable, actually. But then I lent into the success and what it could look like. Why am I doing this? What's the end result? And so you look back at what you did before, and when you had a junction in the road, you said, okay, let me take the easy route or let me take the harder route. And when you take the harder route, it often ends up in huge success. So you think, well, okay, I'll lean into the discomfort. I'll be comfortable with being uncomfortable because I know that it might result in a much better result. And it did. It ended up in an outstanding result. And from there, a client called me and said she wanted to sell, a prospective seller. I then introduced my client. We then put our property on the market. We sold it, and we pulled off. That was transactionally. That was what? It was about 7.5 million. So you can probably do the maths, but I mean it's a lot of it's a chunky fee. So if you're not prepared to go out on the 27th of December and get cold for half an hour, then you don't deserve the accolades, whether you're 51 or 71. There's a sense of, I suppose, there's a sense of entitlement when you get to a certain age. You get kind of comfortable and you think I shouldn't be doing this, and actually that's when I sort of push against it and think, no, that's exactly when you should be doing it.
Yeah.
And in the past when I've had success, how do you get success but build on that success with getting greater success? And I think the answer is you don't become too comfortable and you don't become entitled.
Yes.
And I've done that. I've got success and thought, well, I don't need to do this because I've been there. But actually, that's when you need to double down and do it twice as hard.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not necessarily about doing it personally, but getting others to do it. But it's very hard to get others to do it properly if you're not prepared to do it yourself.
I think I would disagree with that. I think you have to do it yourself, and you can't lead from the back. You can't shout at people whilst being cozy in your car, can you? You've got to be out there, up to your knees in mud, doing it better than they are, showing by example. And actually, I mean, the same client I bumped into in July, thankfully the weather was a lot warmer. We'd just done those colossal deals, and we were really happy. Obviously, it's not just about the fees; it was just about this, the achievement. And I've sold another property in the same development, and there was somebody who I knew who'd missed out, an underbidder. So I thought, well, and I like this person because I've been out to see them, and you can only sell one house to one person. You can't divide it in half. So there was always going to be a loser, and I felt bad about that. But I also saw an opportunity. So I got some letters that I always have on hand, and I put a rucksack on my back, and I delivered 80 letters to the whole estate again. And the same client was walking her dogs, and she said, "Mark, what on earth are you doing out here at 8:30 at night?" And I said, "Well, I'm mail dropping." She said, "Do you still do that?" And I said, "Yeah, I do. I really do." And part of me was a bit embarrassed because I thought, well, what did she think of me doing these mail drops? She must think I'm really odd. But then I think she respected it, and she respected the fact that I was prepared to sort of roll up my sleeves and I wasn't being precious about it. I wasn't getting somebody else to do it. And that's resulted in a sale in the same development at around 2 million. It's resulted in a sale in Edinburgh at 1 million. So it resulted in another sale at 500,000, another sale at around 350,000. So the moral of the story is, if you want things to happen, you've got to go out and make them happen. And you've got to keep going out and making them happen. You can't just expect them to, happen before your eyes. There's no entitlement to success. You make your own luck. And the
Yes.
harder you work, the more lucky you get.
Absolutely. Yes, it's.
And I can. Sorry to interrupt you. I can think of a number of instances where, if I'd taken the easy route, I'd have regretted it. I really regret. It's just on tiny little decisions. Leads to greatness or mediocre. That's the thing. And I can think of a number of instances where I thought, if I'd just taken the easy route, if I'd just jumped in the car a little bit early and not done this or that, or hadn't gone out, and I wouldn't be talking about some of the great achievements we've made. So when things going, when remind me of this in, I always find this period in the market. I've always found this period in the market really quite difficult. I found it really difficult when I ran a traditional business, because the traditional business has a flat cost base, doesn't it? You can't flex the cost base, and you have basically, if you're below the cost base, you're losing money, and if you're above the cost base, you're making money, and you get a peak. In property, in residential property, you go from January and you soar up to April, you get a big spike, and then you get a massive trough around the sort of summertime when you're making a big loss, and then you get a peak again, and then you make a trough, and you hope those peaks are going to be bigger than the troughs. Yeah, that equals profit. And the nice thing about a new business like mine is, because the costs are fairly low and you can flex the costs, you can be a lot more profitable. I mean, my profit now is easily double what it was when I was running a traditional business. But I still feel uncomfortable with this time of year. I still feel uncomfortable. I mean, I'm going to talk to my accountant this Friday, and I'm not looking forward to it. I actually don't look forward to it even when we're doing well, because it's the most leveling conversation you can have with your accountant. I mean, in a good way, she ties me down to the kind of ground and says, "Mark, yeah, you're doing well, but you need to improve on X, Y, and Z, or you think you're doing well, but come on, we can do better." But this month has been quite lean, and I know we'll have shipped some costs, or we'll have broken even, or we'll have made a small profit. And whilst overall, the peak is way bigger than the trough, it still doesn't make me feel very comfortable. So what I try and do, and what I've always done, is absolutely rail against making a loss and trying to kind of flatten that trough to kind of bring it up. And to some extent this year, the reason we did so well is because I worked like a dog in those horrible sort of November, December, January months, plowing away, knowing that it was going to pay dividends. It's a bit like when you're doing a pre-season in some sort of sport, and that it's not fun, but that ultimately it's going to benefit you.
Yeah,
and that's the time. It's what you do in the dark that lets you shine in the light.
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember listening to an interview with, it was Max Whitlock, the gymnast.
Oh yeah, gosh, yeah.
And he was talking about going to the Beijing Olympics, and the fact that once he arrived in China, there was nothing he could do to impact his physical fitness and preparation for that event, because he'd done it. He'd either done it or he hadn't.
Yeah.
But those last 2 weeks, everything came down to his mindset. So he had to put all the preparation in up front. And if he didn't do that, he wasn't going to perform. And he then had to keep his head in the game for that last 2 weeks where, I mean, presumably he was training as well, but the benefit he was going to get from the physical training was much less significant than everything he could do in his head.
It's a bit like cramming for an exam, isn't it? You can't cram the night before. You know, if you haven't done it, you're kind of, you know, you're probably not going to do well or whatever. It's all about preparing. You're not going to lose the cup in August. You know, let's say football or rugby, but you're not going to win it if you don't do the work. That's the critical thing. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard work, but I think if you anchor onto your targets, if you're very target driven and you're very focused on achieving, you break it down into sort of component elements. If you're very sort of fragmented and very sort of granular, then I think it makes it a lot easier. You know, any big task, you can't look at it in overall in any great detail at the time. You can't look at it. If you've got to run 100 miles in a day, let's say, yeah, well, I know people have done that. I've never done that long, but I've done the decent distances. You don't look at it 100 miles. You look at it, I don't know, 425s or 520s, or you break it down into constituent parts, like eating an elephant, and then you focus on those tiny little bits, and you just do the best you can do. And as soon as you hit that milestone, you go, okay, let's go to the next one, the next one, and the next one, and that makes it manageable.
I remember listening to, I don't remember his name now, but explorer who crossed the Gobi Desert on foot, and he got part way across and realized that he was going to run out of water, and got to the point of considering using the sat phone to call for help, except that he then realized that by the time help had arrived, actually that was too late anyway. So the best thing he could do was just knuckle down and walk his way out of it. And he broke it down into pretty much 10-minute slots, 100 yards of walking, 10 minutes recuperate, or whatever it was, 5 minutes recuperating under the sled, sip of water, another 100 yards, and however many tens or hundreds of miles it was he had to cover, he did it in 100 or 200 yard slugs, because it was just that piece of break it down step by step.
Yeah, I mean, any endurance event I've ever done, I've always broken it down into bite-sized chunks and just focus on those bite-sized chunks. And every time I get tick one off, it's just tick, tick, tick. You know, you can't look at it. It's too grim. It's too difficult. It'll be all consuming. That's the point. So, yeah, it's fun, but it's working for yourself is requires an element of stamina, I think.
Yes.
There's no let up.
Yeah. So what's next? What's the future hold for Ellisons?
Yeah, I mean, we've tried the consultant model, and whilst various aspects of Ellisons have been really successful, the consultant model has been unsuccessful, to say the least. And I suppose you have a grand idea of you taking consultants who are older. You're not employing them. It'll be easier to manage, but actually, it's in some ways it's harder to manage, because you're giving them large chunks of the fees, and they're seeing you earning large fees. But you bring them on to clients, and clients want you because you've got 30 years experience and because you've got a track record of delivering. So what you end up doing is you end up doing a lot of legwork for those people, and your sort of your charge out rate diminishes quite dramatically. And so that personally has been a disappointment in that regard. I mean, that's not been successful. And I think the self-employed estate agency model for the very high end doesn't really work unless the people that you've got behind you are very experienced. And a lot of those people aren't experienced. So you can't ask somebody to deal with a £4 million house and ask somebody with 2 years experience. It just doesn't cut it. And even then, even if somebody has significant experience, they have to have a certain gravitas and have to have a certain skill to carry that through. And that's been quite an eye-opening, sort of an awakening event, really, where I always thought what I did was relatively easy. It was just about hard work and graft. But actually, there is a skill. There are skills behind it, and the skills which I find very easy, but other people seem to make very difficult. But I suppose that's the nature of anything, isn't it? You know, people get frustrated when they can't. I mean, I remember doing maths with my dad, you know, and he got frustrated with me because he couldn't understand why I couldn't understand it. Yeah, because to him it was easy. And we all have things which come to us very easily, and when we try and, you know, implement those or teach other people, they find it difficult, and that's hard. So I think the future for Ellisons is we are going to remain boutique, and we're going to remain very targeted, and we're going to uphold our fees, which are the highest in the market by some margin, I would say. And we're going to really identify with who respects that kind of offer. I mean, you don't go to. I mean, I was in London at the weekend, and I went into Louis Vuitton. I went to various sort of posh end brands in Regent Street, etc. And what was it? I think it was Louis Vuitton. They didn't even have price tags on things. I'm being serious. I had to get a QR code out. The point is that the price is what the price is, and you're buying it because of what it is.
Yeah.
And if you can't afford the price, then you shouldn't be going in there, or you certainly shouldn't be considering buying one. And if you don't want to pay that price, that's fine. They're okay with that. They're not going to come back and say, "Oh, this throw was £3,000, but you know what? We'll sell it to you for £2,000." It's £3,000, or you walk out the door and you don't get it.
Yeah.
And that is real brand confidence. That's real brand confidence. What you're saying is it's okay if you want to take 0.85% from another agent, take it, because I know that I'm worth 1.5.
Yes.
And I'm okay with you not respecting that, because what I want to do is work with people who do respect it. So I suppose it's a case of hardening our position in the market and making sure that we identify with people who identify with what we're offering.
Yeah. So effectively, what you've got is you've built the brand on the back of a highly personalized and very targeted service, which gives people exactly what they're looking for, and particularly a great deal of individual contact and dedication.
Yeah, the level of engagement. Yeah, the level of engagement we offer is unsurpassed.
Yeah.
You know, we have a WhatsApp group. We have our personal mobiles. I mean, I had one client who was a billionaire by, you know, he had a private jet, and he had multiple homes, 6 homes around the world. And the level of stamina this guy had was astonishing. 80 years old, and he was texting me because he didn't like WhatsApp. He was SMSing me at 5:30 in the morning. You know, I get up early. I mean, I get up at 6:30 every morning, you know, even at the weekends. But I don't get up at 5:30 or 5. You know, I just don't subscribe to this. It's too early. But I was getting up at 6:30, you know, because I have a kind of routine in the morning where I go through things before starting the day, kind of set my targets and everything else. I do think that really helps. I've read about that, and I that's something that's been really game changing for me. Anyway, getting up at 6:30, this guy was sort of texting me, and he'd already been up for an hour. And what I really liked about him was he was very prescriptive about what he wanted. I want this done, and I want this done at this time. And it was quite demanding, but I quite liked that, because it was unequivocal and very sort of prescriptive. I thought, okay, well that's fine. As long as I deliver that, then he'll be happy, which he was. And he paid handsomely for it. And so, you know, we will do, you know, if somebody says, can I have a viewing at 9:00 at night, we'll do it for them.
Yeah.
It will do it for them. That's no problem. If somebody says Sunday, but I will drop everything. We met that guy because I'm sitting at exactly the same table as I was now on a Monday afternoon at around 3:00. And I got a phone call from one of the golf clubs saying, we've got this guy coming into town. He wants to look at the properties he's selling. So I phoned him up and he said, I want to see him tonight. And so we did. We didn't say, oh, do you know what? We're cooking some nice dinner, or we've got some friends coming around, or I can't be bothered. Can we do it tomorrow? We dropped everything. We made it happen. And on the back of that, it created a great deal and a huge amount of goodwill.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not so much about the price, it's about the value that's delivered.
Yeah, it's just about being. Yeah, it's about adding value and about delivering when they want.
Yes.
I mean, ultra high net worth individuals are not bothered about costs; they're just bothered about service and delivery. I love that because
Absolutely.
I just can't be bothered having a haggle on value. I know I'm worth it, and I know I can deliver. So just tell me what you need to do, and I'll do it.
Yes, absolutely. Fantastic. Look, I mean, that's been a fantastic conversation.
Thank you.
It's fascinating listening to the level of dedication which has led to the multi-award winning business. And yes, I might not wish you all of the uh, the the cold knuckles whilst letter dropping in the middle of winter, but definitely wish you the success that it's bringing.
No, look, I think with that, it's not. It's I'm not meant to be. I mean, we talked, and that's the reason I'm on here is that I'm an average person who's done above average, and the point is that anybody else can do that if they're willing to commit. If they're willing just to go a bit above and beyond and show a level of commitment which other people aren't, then they could do it. And
Yeah,
that's an example of that. But my point is that there's no point in doing the cold knuckle thing for a little while and then saying, "Oh, I've done that. I don't need to do that anymore." You have to keep on doing it. Apart from anything else, just to remind yourself of what it, I think being humble and taking a bit of rough is actually a good thing. It reminds you that you're human.
yeah,
It's also rewards you when you're standing up on stage like last Friday. You think, well, I've earned this because I've gone through the discomfort, and I think there's a real lesson to be learned on that.
yeah. No, absolutely, and clearly it is bringing you the success you deserve, and wish you many more years of, of at least that level of success.
Well, thank you, Ruben. I'll keep on going and trying. Yeah.